I'd like to open our public hearing in accordance with RSA 198:4-B for the purpose of the expenditures of retained general funds from the Conval School District Contingency Fund for the purpose of offsetting the unanticipated expenditures incurred by the district with regard to special education services. Any questions from the public? Please state your name and town, please.
Before I ask my questions, can you specify the rules as far as the public questions? Because I have a number of them, and generally in the school board meeting, you get 2 minutes. So
This is a public hearing, it's not the school board.
I know, but you've never specified what you can and can't do during a hearing, so I want to make sure that I follow the rules. Okay. John Wood from Dublin. First, I'd like to ask, based on the wording here, the unanticipated expenses of special education, and I'm not disputing the question of the money being spent, but I have a hard time believing that the district wasn't tracking. And so my question is when did the district first know that you were going to exceed the budget?
Well, first of all, we never exceed the budget. We always stay within the budget. What we do is we work on line transfers or we work within the dollars that we have. Ben, do you want to come up? I know you don't really want to, but so we have been challenged by special education costs for the entirety of the year as well as last year. These included items that were we had to contract service because we could not hire at the rate of pay that we were paying, so we had to contract services. So we have been aware that we were exceeding our special ed budget for quite some time. It wasn't until we came to the end of the year when we need to actually start to decide what we're going to do and how we're going to handle that we approached the board to work with the unexpended fund balance. So
So
because can I finish? May I finish?
Yeah.
So so when we are at the end of the year, we start to look at how we're going to manage any lines that have cost overruns. And so this is the time of year that we look to the board and we say, would you like us to either completely, clean out the budget, or would you like to go into the retained fund balance as an emergent situation? We would not have done that earlier in the year. It would have been significantly premature because we wouldn't have known about the savings that we have. So we had significant savings this year, for instance, around snow plowing. We did not plow as much as we needed to. So it's not until those items start to close out that we can understand the significance and the full extent of the situation.
Okay. But those weren't unanticipated based on your statement that the school district knew that you were going to exceed your budgeted allocation and you were waiting till the end of the year, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a question. What's your question?
So why did you use the term unanticipated when you said you've known you were going to exceed that throughout the school year and you were waiting till the end of the school year?
No,
they were unanticipated. You had an idea of what the exceeding was going to be.
They were unanticipated when we set the budget. We started to anticipate that they were going to be problematic when we couldn't hire anyone last summer. However, we thought, like we have done in years past, that we might be able to manage that situation within the confines of the budget itself. We were unable to do so because of the significance of how many unanticipated positions and consultants and outside people we had to hire because we weren't able to hire people to do the job in district. So for instance, if we hire an SLPA, that's a speech language paraprofessional, that costs the district about $50,000. To contract that service out cost $109,000. So those are the types of cost overruns that we have managed over the last 7 or 8 years that this year we simply could not.
Okay. So the next question is why on the expected revenue forecasts, is there no mention of utilizing health insurance to offset the cost of special education when there are provisions to allow for insurance to be utilized for things like occupational therapy, speech therapy, psychological, emotional support? All of those things exist in the department, or the ability to use free appropriate public education and use those private insurers to reimburse. So why have we not looked at some program to allow us to do that, like Monadnock Community Hospital, who has the ability to bill insurance companies, and simply the district pays the differences?
That's not how it works. Okay, we are required by law to provide these services to the students by licensed personnel that we have to pay. They're employees of either employees of the district, or we contract services out.
And what education law requires that?
Requires what exactly?
Requires that you do that.
IDEA, it's
Okay.
federal law.
Right.
It was passed in 1972.
Okay. And part of IDEA and part of the free appropriate public education is you can bill insurance providers for those services. The parents cannot incur cost, but you still can bill the insurance companies. If my son needs emotional support and I go to my pediatrician at Monadnock Community Hospital, they're going to provide a referral to someone that's licensed to do that, and my insurance is going to cover that. So why is it that I do that? And I don't appreciate the smiling too.
Well, because
I'm
you
asking
keep
questions.
talking and you're not asking, you're
did
not
ask a
actually
question.
asking a question, Mr. Wood.
I did.
What you're saying is you're editorializing your question.
No, I asked a question.
Mr. Cisneros answered your question, and now you're editorializing because you think you understand IDEA, but the truth of the matter is we are not able to do what you say we can do.
So legally, you're not allowed to bill insurance companies as long as the parents have no cost. That's legally, you cannot do that. Okay.
Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak to the board on this issue? Okay, seeing none, we'll keep this open for another 23 minutes. Do you need a board vote?
You can't vote until after it's
Yeah, 30 minutes, okay. We have a second public hearing under RSA 198:20-C, Roman numeral 2, for the purpose of expending funds from the Conval Athletic Trust Fund. Board members, if you remember, our 4x4 team made it to the national championships. And to fund that, we are looking to take funds from the Athletic Trust Fund up to $9,500 to offset the cost. Is there any questions within the public for this expenditure? All right, Kimberly, will you keep that open for 30 minutes, please? Okay, seeing no questions from the public, board members, then let's open the board meeting with a pledge, please. Points of pride.
So at AES, they had a wonderful school music performance at the Antrim Town Hall, and it was standing room only, and the students were just fantastic. Pierce School had was the release of Mrs. Germain's fourth grade brook trout minnows. They also released their frogs across the district. At DCS, students have worked so hard on the end of the year assessments that a whole school field trip to the Ecotarium in Worcester. At Greenfield Elementary School, they had an amazing music and math in May event. Many families came out and heard about ways to support math skills. At PES, on Thursday evening, PES kindergarten teachers Bethany Town and Britta Warner held a kindergarten information night for incoming students and their families. The Girls on the Run team will participate in a 5K in Concord this Saturday, was last Saturday, and there will be over 3,000 girls running from teams, or were 3,000 girls running from teams all over New Hampshire. At the high school, the Conval Performing Arts Banquet was Friday, May 31st. Graduating seniors were recognized and 9 students were inducted into the International Thespian Society. Will Samard has been crowned the Division II state champion in the 3,200 meter. This advanced Will to the Meet of Champions this past Sunday, where Will finished in second place in the state and will be competing in the New England Championship this Saturday at UNH. And finally, as you know, the 4x100 team has broken their own school record again. This is the 6th time in 2 years. Kendrick Edwards, Jack Harris, Elliot Featherstone, Anthony Caldwater all posted impressive times in this week's Meet of Champions. Although the team did not qualify for New England's, their times put them as one of the fastest relays in New England. Their respective time from Sunday would place them first in Vermont, second in Maine, and 5th in Massachusetts. And one last one. Ada Davis has signed a commitment letter to run track and field at Emmanuel next year. Congratulations to Ada on her hard work and dedication. And those are our points of pride.
Thank you. Approval of the manifest.
I certify the manifest listed below totaling $1,471,550.42 have been reviewed by me and found to be proper charges against the Kentucky Valley School District for goods and/or services received and have been properly processed prior to their submittal to the school board.
Can I have a motion for approval? Can I have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstention. Okay, thank you. All right, this is the part of our agenda where we are open for public comment. Remind you that you need to know the town, your from and your name. Give you 2 minutes. All speakers have to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscenities, libels, anything that's a violation of these statements will be considered out of order. Citizens are required to discuss ideas, opinions, policies, and positions. Restrain from any attacks on students, staff, or administrators, when appropriate to protect the privacy of the student's family. And the audience is required to respect the speaker at the floor. And the instruction of this forbidden will be warned. The second instruction may result in being rejected from the meeting by my request. Or terminate the speaker privilege of address. The speaker does not follow. Well, listen. Would like to speak to the board. Yes.
My name is Brady Proctor, and I'm a resident of Antrim. I grew up in the school district as a two-sport captain and member of student council. This fight saddens me so much to see the dissension, the shell of the coronavirus stick. My father is Kevin Proctor. He was recently not removed without being given a call. Over the past couple months, after the community and after the support of my dad, at the April 2nd school board meeting, he has been the victim of unprofessional harassment at the SAU and district leader. We're all lucky.
No. I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to allow that. You,
I'm not allowed to state that.
you're not allowed to make those statements because there's no evidence in place that I've seen that that is true. So I'm not going to let you make comments about the district administration or personnel's in that nature. You can continue, but you're not going to make those comments.
Well, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I cannot talk about actually happened to a staff member and what is continuing to happen to other staff members. And frankly, I don't have anything to say. If I cannot talk about injustices that happen at the hands of administrators, then frankly, I don't know what to tell you. So, good luck in your new job.
Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to the board? Let me make it pretty clear that I am not going to tolerate pot shots taken at administration in this district or pot shots made to this board. Neither of those individuals anywhere deserve that kind of statement, so I'm going to cut them off. That's totally inappropriate to make statements that are not factual information that I'm aware of, nor do I personally believe those things would actually happen within this district in my 51 years of experience of working in this district. So just so you know, I'm going to cut it off. So with that said, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Doug, please.
Good evening, Doug Sutherland, Hancock. I'm here today just to, it all disappeared. I apologize. I'm here to say that I wanted to speak on the equity audit that is happening. I wanted to just express how I'm glad that this is moving forward, primarily because it's in the strategic plan, and I work with a lot of organizations, all of which have strategic plans and to varying success, if you will. So I'm glad things are moving forward with that. And I would like to encourage everyone in our district to take part in either the focus groups or the surveys and the interviews if you can. The more information that we have, the better we can serve our students. Also, it's, in some conversations that I've had, a lot of times, people look at me and they say, oh, of course, you want to talk about equity, and if you're looking at me now, you're maybe guessing why they think I want to talk about equity. And for me, what it comes down to is that everyone in this district should want to talk about equity if you use it or if you feel like you don't. Equity is not equal. Equity is different from equal. If you don't believe me, look it up. So I encourage you to take part in the focus groups, say what you would like to say, take part in the surveys, put the information down that you feel supports you, because that is the information that the school district can use to make all students, every student that we have, make their educational experience, and I should say, the students we have now, not the students for 20 years ago, the students we have now make their educational experience everything that Conval can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right.
So the feasibility committee will be meeting next Thursday, the 13th. I think the confusion came because the first was on a Wednesday. So our second Thursday came right after the first Tuesday when the board met. So I think that's where things got sort of confused. So we will be meeting on the 13th, and we'll be going over a lot of expense data that Brian has put together for us to study. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Selectman Advisory. Want to speak to that?
Is that the Selectmen's Advisory Committee will not be meeting in the summer. That was a vote taken at the meeting. And it was, I think, unanimous that we talked that way. And that was about all in the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, the presentation that was done by our Assistant Superintendent, which was on, all the test scores, and that was done well too. So that's all I have for that.
Thank you, Ellen. Janine, policy?
There are 3 policies on the agenda for first read tonight. Please consider them over the next 2 weeks and address any questions or concerns to Dr. Kimberly Rizzo Saunders, Dr. Forrest, or myself. If there are no substantive changes, they will be on our next meeting's agenda as a second read, and we'll ask the board to adopt those 3 policies. The first policy is IKL, Academic Honesty and Integrity, and it is in the instructional programs category. This policy incorporates classroom management of AI. The second is ACN, Nursing Mothers Accommodation, from the Foundations and Basic Commitments category, and it falls under the AC non-discrimination policy, and it incorporates new federal directions in regards to nursing mothers. The third is IHBAM, Special Education Procedures Manual, and is again from the instructional programs category, and it is a required annual update. The update was reviewed by the Director of Special Education, Ben Mentor. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Janine. Consent agenda. Any questions for board members on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, thank you. Superintendent's report.
Be there, Mike, for that. There won't be any representation from the well, you'll be there. Brian, I'm sorry, Brian will be there. Okay. In July, we have nothing scheduled as of right now. July usually only contains 1 board meeting. That would be scheduled on the 16th, as long as that's okay with the board.
So board members, it's not the first, although it is the 3rd, isn't it? So it'll be the 3rd Tuesday a month is that. That will be the only meeting we have in July. Is that okay? I don't see any questions. Janine?
And the policy is scheduled for the 23rd. And policy committee, I have negotiations at the same time, so I'm wondering if we could take for the policy.
I thought you were going to do policy before the board meeting on the 16th.
That would be great if we could do that. Brenda, did you?
20th is a Saturday. I thought, right, so we have a policy committee meeting for the 20th of June. Yeah,
All right.
that's what we thought we landed on the policy.
Oh, yeah, we have one for the 20th.
So I thought we weren't going to do one in, we, great.
All right. So the board meeting will be in July, the 16th.
Yes, yes, thank you, Aaron.
Okay, it's, Title IX.
Yes, for Title IX.
All right. All right, so we're all set for the July meeting then, okay? Go ahead.
Okay, outside of that, we have several school board requests that we are working on, and we will continue doing that. We have had several come in that are, actually have us creating new reports and new things. That is not usually what we do. So I am looking to the board for some guidance around how you want us to handle school board requests moving forward.
Janine?
So, I have a suggestion to the board. I don't know what the board, you might want to think about this, is when we make a board request, we add a reason for why we're asking for it. And, you know, in the first place, we're not supposed to be asking like just general questions to put the administration to work. But in the second place, like when I was working in my work life, I worked for the state, and a lot of times people would come and they would, you know, they would ask, you know, these questions. They were working on a grant, or they were working for a nonprofit, and they needed information, and they would ask for information that we simply couldn't provide, and they could not understand why, because you determine eligibility and all these programs, and don't you have all this data and blah blah. Well, we do, but we don't collect it in the way you're asking for it. It was not possible for us to go in and start switching stuff around. But if they told me why they were looking for it and what they were looking for, I could usually provide that information in a different form or a different format. So I would like to recommend that when we make a board request, we say why we're asking for that information.
Feelings from the board members? Seems like a reasonable request. Okay. Thumbs up? I don't think we need to take a vote on that. Okay,
I think it's a good idea.
thank you. Other suggestions? That help you?
Yeah, that's fine. I think at some point the board needs to decide like what length of time it is reasonable. So if something's going to take, I have a board request right now that it's probably going to take, between all the other things, 6 to 8 weeks before we can get that information to you. Not because we're not working on it or that's how long it's going to take us to do, but because we have to prioritize our other work for obvious reasons. So I just, you know, that balance is important moving forward to share with whoever sits here next year.
So a suggestion would be that when a request comes in, that you attach, be able to respond to this in X number of days or X number of weeks, and then the board member will know, and the board members would know that also. Is that
That's fine with me.
okay? Old business.
So we have the audit engagement. That needs a board vote for us to engage.
I
That
have a
was
motion from the board
folders.
to, you want to do an exception for the audit, correct?
No, I want you guys to you should vote to engage with Ludniks and Sanders.
Okay. A vote to engage?
I move that we engage with Plotnick and Sanderson as our auditors, as stated in their letter of their offer.
Does that have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Okay.
In your packet, there is a updated, so this is like a first read. When we do job descriptions, you get a first read and a second read, just like you do on policies. This is a first read. You can see, there's really only one change, and that is the supervisor of the, Extended Learning Opportunity Work-Based Learning Coordinator. The last time this was redone was 5/7/2019. So this is a first read. And then we've been talking about this a little bit. Ben, do you want to come forward? We have a justification for the addition of speech language services.
Ben, just before you start, I'm going to close. Yeah, just before you start, I'm going to close the first public hearing.
Can I make one more comment, please?
And the public hearing?
On the public hearing?
Sure.
I was going to respond, John Wood, Dublin, I was going to respond earlier when you asked me a question, and I didn't have my phone in front of me because I didn't print this page out before I came. On the Department of Education's website, and I apologize, the cost of the program may include tuition and other related services such as room and board, psychological and medical services necessary for diagnostic and evaluative purposes, and adequate transportation. Funds available from any public or private source, including insurers, may be used by the recipient to meet the requirements of free appropriate public education. So my question, having read that from the Department of Education, is the school board and the district willing to look at a solution to help add additional revenue to the special education so that we don't continue to overspend?
Brian?
We do get reimbursements through Medicaid, as all schools do, and that's the public coverage that we get, the only coverage we get, and it's a very small percentage of
And
what
it does
we
have
actually spend.
provisions for private insurance if the parents allow for it, and the school district can reimburse the costs of the deductibles for the parent. The parent cannot incur expenses, but there is a provision allowing them to bill the insurance company.
And
So why do we want to bang on the state, but we don't want to go to the insurance companies to reimburse you?
who goes to the insurance companies?
Once again, that's why I asked if you simply worked with our community hospital potentially to set some kind of agreement up. They have the ability to bill insurance companies that you don't.
What I mean by that is we have to have somebody to facilitate that. We don't have the staff to do that.
Lieutenant?
So, John, let me apologize. I think I misunderstood what you were referring to. So, for instance, we might be able to work with the hospital to provide PT services, physical therapy services, and then the hospital would bill the insurance company. So those are the pieces that you're talking about.
We spend $13,114,300 per the district profile. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So I understand what you're referring to. However, one, we have not been able to develop that relationship with the hospital, not because there hasn't been attempts over the years, but because the hospital also has similar, so the same positions we're trying to work and find, they're having the same types of issues. They also don't provide the same types of services. So, for instance, when we offer speech and language services, that service isn't being offered like speech therapy for 45 minutes on a Friday. That service is often a push-in service to a classroom in real time at the moment and in the time they need it in the classroom. And so those services, and so I do know what you're talking about for medical services and things like that, but educational services, the types that we're providing, that does not align with the types of services the hospital is providing. So my apologies for misunderstanding what you exactly were referring to.
So I don't step on you. So we spent $13,114,300 or 24.5% based on the district profile of the DOE 25 from last year. So my point is I'm asking, why can't we take a look at how we effectively spend money for insurance so that the taxpayers aren't paying the extra additional costs and the students ultimately get better services?
All right, public hearing is closed on this issue. Ben?
Hello, Ben Mentor, Director of Special Education. So this is increasing speech language services proactively for next year. So many of the things that have been talked about by Dr. Saunders with additional costs happened throughout the past year. So I've outlined in here, different, additional monies, increasing costs, and, having to adapt to situations. So this would be adding, asking for permission to add a speech language pathologist position. I see that position needing to continue likely into the future, and then and that position would be covered by funds that we budgeted for in contracted services, as a more proactive way to use that rather than filling in gaps for service needs throughout the year. And then to add a speech language pathology assistant or SLP position to give flexibility in who can be hired for that position. That additional cost could be up to $105,000. And, I would look at IDA funds to cover any difference in over that amount. The speech language team and coordinators have put together some data here regarding trends in services. The available units that a speech language pathologist needs to provide and the amount of time that they have to do that, and their other benefits. And there's been some lack in, ability to support in buildings with intervention and being parts of other teams because there's been a high need to focus on services. For example, this year we had to hire remote speech language therapists, which require additional facilitator staffing. So that, does work for some kids, but those services are not able to meet all kids' needs, and that puts a lot of taxing pressure on the rest of the speech language team to cover across the many schools and situations that we have.
So Ben, if I understand what you're asking for additional staff, but the funds are already in the presently found within the budget, is that correct?
For the first SLP, the second one would be asking for an increase, and I would work to use IDA funds if I can, but the IDA funds will be very tight as well moving forward.
So do we know what the cost factor would be?
It's on on page 5. It's up to it's up to $105,000.
All right. Questions from board members? Jim?
Yeah. So I think a thing this board ought to get in the habit of, and we didn't do it ourselves at our last meeting, is when we approve an additional expense in the budget, we should have an idea where that expense is being taken from. When we agreed to hire a PES teacher, we should have said, and where is that money coming from, so we understand the impact of that decision. And I think the same thing needs to be done in any increase in staffing or other extra above the budget line item. If we're going to have to transfer funds out of another line item to cover it, we should understand that up front, and so we can balance the impacts of what's going on. Secondarily, I have to agree with Mr. Wood as far as the ability to go look for funds from private insurance in a quick web search, and I'm not claiming to be an expert because I did a quick web search. It certainly does indicate, and at least on one, there is a New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services site that says schools should go after Medicaid funds, and again, that might be a limited number. There's another site that says schools are required to try to obtain reimbursement from private and public health insurance for health-related services included in your child's IEP. Now, that may be another state that's making that requirement, but it certainly says that it can and maybe should be done. And I understand we don't have a health billing expert on staff, but weighing the cost of a health billing expert versus the revenues that we might recover versus the non-costing out is something that we should look at when we're going into the next budget cycle. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think that it might be a good time to offer to the board sometime in the fall for Ben to come forward and show you the actual cost and benefit analysis, even of our Medicaid piece. So you're talking about potentially hiring someone, if we could actually even hire somebody. In case you haven't noticed, it's hard to hire people on this side of the mountain and keep them. You're talking about potentially hiring somebody to do something that is almost for items that are barely even going to be reimbursable. So to have, and I'm not a healthcare expert, I'm certainly not a health insurance expert, but in order to get reimbursed by health insurance, you have to have a doctor involved. There are very clear pieces to how that happen. You got some experience?
I have zero oversight on any services. I mean, I've got obviously plenty of patients in the district that I take care of, and I have zero oversight. And have I never been asked by parents, or, I mean, parents ask me to review the IEP, but as far as the actual services given, that's
And maybe not an MD, but that PT is a doctor, right?
no. Good theory. They can have a doctorate in physical therapy. They can have a doctorate in speech language. So I don't know the answer to what each individual's qualification is, but they'd have to have a billing number with state.
So, Jim, on the first part about where were the funds coming from, I'm in agreement. So we've already requested a PE teacher, so those monies have to be allocated. We have one here, and I'm okay with waiting till the next board meeting to have the superintendent get back to us how they're going to allocate those funds, where will it come from.
Well, I believe that Ben did say he is going to try to put that in the grant first.
Right, and then the first SLP out of contracted services.
Okay, so then you would come back here if you're not going to get those funds from there.
I'm asking for up to 105,000 for the second SLP.
Right, but the question is, where are we going to find that 105,000 in our operating budget for next year? And what Jim's asking for, and he's right, what are we not going to do if we do that? Where are those funds going to come from? I believe that's what you're stating, Jim. Yes. So, Janine?
I'm wondering if the board would consider rescinding our vote from our last meeting to add another third grade teacher at PES and instead hire the SLP.
We've already made a vote on that, and we already have that in the works. So, I mean, you can bring it forward as a motion, but I think that's inappropriate to do at this point when we've already indicated as a board that we're going to support it. I think Jim's point about where are those funds going to come from is a fair request. let's get the answer to that, and then get an answer to where we're going to find $105,000. I think that's a fair request from the board. So we've got two things standing there. And when we get those answers, then we can vote on. So I get objections from other board members. That's the way I'd like us to take this. Not seeing any then, so where the fund's going to come from, and what are we not going to do if we do that? So fair request. On far as the medical issue, I think we need to do some, ask the superintendent to come back with some recommendation for us. Not right away, I get that. I also want to say, my experience is that the SAU has done everything they could to find resources out there. Sometimes the squeeze isn't worth the juice. You invest a lot of money for very little return. And that happens in many things within a school district.
If that analysis has been done,
I get it.
let us know.
I get it. Superintendent.
So I just want to make sure that Brian and I have been clear. There are very few things you can actually put forward to insurance because of the way we offer services. OT services do not happen in an office, away from all, they happen within the educational setting. Those things don't qualify for insurance reimbursement. So, Brian's been doing this for a couple of years. I got a couple of years under my belt. We're not making stuff up.
That's not what I request, and I think the superintendent's given you part of that. If there's something we're missing, we'll bring it back. All right, I need a vote on the first public hearing on the funds for special education. Can I have a motion to approve the utilization of those funds? Can I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Abstentions. The second public hearing was in the allocation of Conval Athletic Trust funds. Can I have a motion to authorize the use of up to $9,500 from the Conval Athletic Trust Fund for the 4x4 relay team? Been moved. Can I have a second? Moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? All right. Interim superintendent position. As we spoke to last board meeting, that we were going to ask the assistant superintendent to come forward after August 22nd and do the job as an interim position until we can do a search committee and hire a new superintendent. I reassured Ann that in this process, if she wanted to apply, that would be possible. But if she didn't and she wanted to go back, her assistant superintendent position would be there for her. So at this point, could I please have a vote to bring Ann forward as our interim superintendent, waiting for, we'll negotiate a contract with her if we approve to go ahead with that.
So move.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Thrilled to ask for this vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Thank you very much, Ann and board members. So thank you very much.
So at this time of year, we are 100 miles an hour on the hiring front, and we ask for permission to hire. Usually we can't sign anything binding until which time those names come before the board. That 4 or 5 day wait can cost us candidates. So we ask for permission to hire from the board for usually through September.
This past practice, and I'm older, so Janine?
I move to offer that authorization to the superintendent and the superintendent of the district to hire in the absence of a board meeting.
Have a second. It's moved and seconded. Questions? Doc?
And just to clarify, everyone, this is for budgeted open positions, correct?
Budgeted open positions, correct. Any other questions? Favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, okay. Superintendent search, RFP.
So in your folders is a draft RFP for a superintendent search firm. Happy to take feedback on that. The sooner that you get it out, the sooner that you can engage with a firm, and the sooner you can get that community involved in that process.
Do I have any questions for board members?
It was definitely not as long as you've had any of your other materials,
Okay.
so.
So generally, I like board members to have time to read these before we vote on them.
You know,
I also know it's important for us to be moving on this. If board members have all had an opportunity to read this and they're comfortable with it as an RFP, I'd entertain a motion to put this out so we can move on this as soon as possible. So I leave that to the board's discretion because I'm not, I'm,
you do have a couple of decisions you do need to make
Okay.
on this. You need to decide when you want proposals back. You need to decide when you want to put this out. So those two decisions both need to be made. And then we're happy to bring it back next time if you feel like those decisions need to be done at the next meeting, but those are the two decisions you need to make.
I think we'll wait till the next meeting so we can discuss when we want it to go out and when we want it back, so. Sure, Jim, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I would post it the first week in July, even though that it's the 4th of July, with a request that all proposals be back by August and that you are starting your search with that group, and they're starting their work with the community in September. Yes, so I would say that once they have met with the community, you do not want more than a month to go by before they produce a profile to say this is who you're looking for. Ideally, you'd want them working with the community in September, working on the profile in October. They would have the profile to you by November, and you would be out in December. And if you miss December, your pool is going to be much smaller.
Questions from board members? So we'll wait to our next board meeting at the end of the month and set those dates in place. All right, thank you, Super. We have policies. Janine, I think you,
Missed one.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, I missed the last one, IHBAB, developmental delay as qualifying disability. So again, if you have any questions, please direct them to the superintendent, assistant superintendent, or me, and we'll ask Ben.
Field trip proposal.
Sure. So this is a field trip proposal for our 9 to 12th grade football players. They're going to go to Mount Pleasant High School in Providence, Rhode Island, and work with that team and those coaches from August 21st to the 22nd. It is overnight, and hoping to continue to build their skills.
Questions from board members?
Nope, this would be self-funded.
Janine?
What's the rationale behind that school?
There are long-standing relationships with that school and the coaching staff.
Other questions?
Can I make one more?
Certainly.
Certainly, we would not allow any student who could not afford to go to just not be able to go, just to be clear.
I move that we accept the proposal for the field trip to Mount Pleasant High School in Providence, Rhode Island for, is it the football team?
Can I have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Okay, thank you. Great time. Setting the rate for out-of-district tuition. Superintendent.
So every year we bring forward a discounted rate to basically if we have room in classrooms. If you recall last year, we turned students away because we did not have the resources at our high school to take the students. So this is only for students that will move into a seat that for all intents and purposes is open. Please keep in mind that because of the cuts we made to the high school, that it is unlikely that we will be accepting students to the high school next year. But this is the 40% of the average cost. This is for individual parents and families who want to come and, again, take advantage of a seat that may be open. It is not for, this is not the rate that we would set, for instance, if another district was sending a student to a specialized program or sending a student here for best interest. This is the rate that is for individual parents or individual children who are taking a seat that would otherwise stay empty.
Questions?
So when we actually probably 7 or 8 years ago, we figured out that the 40% was the kind of the cost differential between what it actually would cost to bring a student in and or leave that seat empty.
Other questions? Janine?
This is a feasibility committee question. I'm trying to head off. But so if, when we're looking at like the possibility of Francistown and Dublin leaving and they would like to tuition their children into the district, this is not the cost at which they would tuition them in.
No, this is, again, an individual cost for individual families taking a seat that we are not obligated to provide.
Right.
So when you sign a tuition contract, the district becomes obligated to provide the seats for those students regardless of if we have to add a teacher or not.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
And
Yes.
this wouldn't be setting any precedent, again, from the feasibility point of view, in terms of the rate that we charge for an out-of-district student.
A contract negotiation for between a town and a school district is between that town and a school district, and then has to be approved by the State Board of Ed. So, certainly that is something that you could consider. You do not have to offer this rate. This is the rate. We've been offering a 40% rate for about 7 or 8 years. We offer a rate per our CVEA, and this is actually just a little more than that. As far as, you could change this rate at any time. Well, I would ask that you don't change it mid-year on parents who have signed tuition agreements with us, but this is not a rate that you are beholden to for any other reason except to meet the tuition agreements that you presently have in place. That's why we set it in summer. As far as does it set a precedent, again, if you go into a contract with a town to educate their children, you are contracting with that town regardless of how many students they're sending. So you're saying, it's going to be $25,000 for every middle school student that you send us. And you can charge that, you can only charge that $25,000 for each student they send. Now, if they send a 31st student and you have to add a teacher, you can't charge them more for that. You still can only charge them $25,000. And as you know, that happens all the time. The $10,000, again, is only to slip a student into that seat that would otherwise be empty, which is why I'm not anticipating that we're going to be able to accept any high school students this year.
Right, it just, we're in new territory here, at least for me, in terms of with the feasibility. So that is directly what my question is, and
Yep.
my concern is about. And I understand this is what we've done, and it's factored, Jim asked that question about where the number came from, and you explained it. So my concern is how that number might apply or be involved in any outcome with the feasibility study.
We can certainly obtain legal advice on that, if you would like me to.
Janine?
I have a different question. Can we collect base adequacy for those students who tuition into the district?
No, we do not collect base adequacy for students that tuition in. But that's a good try.
I would like some legal advice on that.
Board? In favor of asking for,
I got a question.
well, first of all, on legal advice?
On legal advice?
No.
Okay. Is it a different question?
Yeah,
Okay,
related tuition.
okay, well, let's go to legal advice. Is the board in favor? Just give me a thumbs up if we're in favor of asking for legal advice on this issue. Janine?
So maybe I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we get a legal opinion of the precedents that our out of district tuition rate would have on any outcome from the feasibility study. So if Dublin or Francistown left, would they be entitled to the current? I'm not hearing no, 100% no, except just now. I didn't hear no up till this point. So if I hear no, then, but if we think we need a legal, I personally would be more comfortable with some legal advice. So I'm making a motion to that end.
Can I have a second? No second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Mike?
What we're voting on, that it was not a great. Parents. At our.
Mike?
So my understanding is that if one of the towns wanted to send their kids to the high school or middle school, we would have to negotiate a tuition agreement with them that would have nothing to do with any current tuitions that are in place, that it would be a new agreement that would be decided upon between the district and that community.
So my thoughts don't matter. What I think that you should consider is that you could potentially have a town do something like say, well, we're going to give each family X amount of dollars to spend where they like, which would then put you in the situation of having students come and say, I would like this. The only thing that would do would be potentially having you have the capacity to say, no, we're full. And you would only be able to offer empty seats to those students. But please be, other towns have done that have said you have X number of dollars, you can spend it wherever they'll take you. So, I would agree with you, but I do not have a JD. Nor have I passed the bar.
So we have a motion and a second to get legal advice. Do we have clarity on the legal advice as far as the board's concerned?
Jim, are you comfortable with the motion, or would you like me to amend it to include any of your concerns?
Any other questions? There with you?
I'm very good.
All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Let me see a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay. All those opposed, raise your hands. Abstentions. Okay. I guess we won't be looking for legal advice.
The question now,
Certainly.
is there what's the tuition rate for?
For,
What number, if it's higher
Yep.
or lower?
It's-
different tuition rate though, right?
it is a different tuition rate. It is lower. It is $8,568.44 for elementary school, $8,635.38 students for 38 cents for middle school, and for high school, it's $8,428.98.
And that's a contractual agreement we have with the union.
Yes.
So the question is, we have a vote here to set tuition rate. Do we want to wait on this vote until we get comfortable with it? Or are you comfortable with this rate and putting a vote forward?
When do we need to vote? Kimberly?
And I believe that is what we have, was only on space available, correct? Correct. Okay.
We will make sure that it is everywhere.
Yes, we had a motion and we've had it seconded, so set the tuition rate. Well, make one, in case we didn't.
Okay. I move that we accept the proposed out-of-district tuition rate for the 24-25 school year for Kentucky
Second.
Valley.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this one? All right, seeing none,
Legal comes back and says we were wrong.
we're not going to legal though, so, because the board didn't vote in favor. Yeah, it wasn't in favor.
I don't understand that.
Okay, so all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Okay. All right, going to non-public. Anyone in the audience, any other people? All right, go ahead. You haven't spoken.
I think it's a great discussion about tuition costs. John Wood from Dublin, sorry. I think really the point of clarity that one might ask is for a legal opinion is if a town leaves a district but remains in the SAU, which is also the same superintendent for both school districts, is there any requirement legally for the superintendent to allow for those students to go to the other school district within the same SAU? Or can they deny students from one district to go to another district? I think that's more the appropriate question for legal counsel to determine, since there maybe isn't precedent set for that. Thank you.
Nope, nope, nope. You cannot. You cannot. Nope. Nope. Yeah. Anyone else in the audience? All right. Remember the ground rules, please. All right.
It's me again, Brady Proctor from Antrim, and I have to take a step outside to reorient myself and decide I may not have been, I guess, as eloquent as I wanted to be earlier, but I feel like I genuinely am not violating rules. I run it by principle, but I will respect the rules of the school board. I would just say, I guess, kind of a summation. The main point of what my speech is going to be about is that my family. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. The main point of what I was going to say is my family's full of teachers on both sides. So creating a safe environment for teachers is incredibly important to me. I guess I'll just say this. Words and actions matter. Character matters. And the effects of your actions have direct impact on other people's lives. What you choose to say and what you choose not to say have direct impacts on people's lives. And so I guess just to close, congratulations, Dr. Forrest. I'm sure you'll be a great superintendent. For the time being, nothing's final yet, but thank you for the board for hearing me out.
Anyone else in the public? All right. Seeing none. Could I have a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2 for
Negotiations, personnel, and student.
Dick? We're in non-public. Thank you. Yeah, so you moved it over to non-public. Seconded. All in favor, Dick is saying aye. Aye. No. Yes, that's my water bottle.